All right, welcome everybody. Today is Friday, February 28th, last day of February 2025. This is You've Got Options for Income Navigator. Hopefully, you all are having a good day. We're going to start off with a daily chart of S&P 500. I have a couple of things that are on this chart. I've shown this before. We're just going to really quickly take a look at the most recent pullback, which feels like the world is ending, right? We are all scanning the internet looking for the headlines, trying to tie a headline to what's happening in the market to, maybe make ourselves feel better. But the reality is, if we tune out the noise, things will become a little bit more clear. In the last, right, this is going back to November. We can go back to this is September, right? So after August, right? August, we had a 10% decline with a big spike in volatility, and that was more of an event, right? We had some news out of Bank of Japan, and that caused market volatility to spike quite a bit. But nonetheless, we did see a pullback to the tune of about maybe 5 or 6% before that, right? So we did see this is until Friday. So if we look at the move from late July into the beginning of August, that down move was about 6.5%, and then we had a big down day on the Monday, and then from there, market just kind of took off. And since then, we have seen the market pull back several more times, right? We had a down move. This is going back to September. This was 4.26%. We had a small corrective move, right? It's all in the context of a rising or uptrending market. We had a corrective move back in November, late October, early November. This was 3.1%. Most recently, we saw a corrective move to the downside. This is sometime in the beginning of December into the Fed meeting. This December 18th was the Fed decision, and then the market kind of stopped going down in the middle of January. But if we measure the move that took place from early December until middle of January, right, which took 38 calendar days, so over a month, about a month and a week, right, we saw a move which was 5.36%. We are currently undergoing what I think is a correction from the most recent swing high, which was an all-time high in the S&P 500. From the high that came in on February 19th to the low of today, this is SPX, so this is cash S&P, right? This doesn't show us any overnight action. So I'm not sure if we had an overnight low, but just, comparing apples to apples, we are seeing a down move in the last 9 calendar days, right? 7 trading days, 7 bars. I think there one day was a holiday there somewhere, but this move is just over 5%. So if you wanted to ask yourself if what we're seeing is an outlier move, is this a lot, is this a little, right? To put some context around it, this isn't the first time, it probably isn't the last time we're going to see the market correct to the tune of about 5%. Now, once we start to get more or less close to, down 6, 7%, anything beyond 7%, now we're too close to being down 10%, where the media is going to make it feel really, really bad, calling this the official correction, and then God forbid we go down 20%, they'll, call it a bear market. But if you just zoom out and see where we came from, and this is probably not the best, maybe SPY, right? If you look at where we came from, right, this is 2024, all of that. Then 2023, right? I mean, we came quite a long way from where we were just a couple of years ago. So to assume that we're just going to continue in the same direction at the same rate, just kind of silly. Right? You have to expect there are going to be corrections along the way. And our only job is to make sure, right, is that we are taking care of the risks in our trading and to make sure that we live to fight another day. So would I say that what's happening right now is pleasant? No, if you're putting on a bunch of income trades where you're long delta, you're short volatility, it isn't fun to hold in the last couple of weeks. But we haven't really gotten to a point where any of these positions are, in big trouble, so to speak. And I'm going to go through all of my positions, and I'm going to share option and explore. Hopefully, this will kind of give you a little bit of an idea about how I go about these trades. I'm going to say, that it's a lot more fun to hold these income trades when the market is just grinding slowly higher, right? It's high fives everywhere. We're all making money. Short puts decaying much faster than we thought it will. Volatility is low. Nothing is happening, right? Every day, market down, accounts up, and all that good stuff. And then every now and then we get these kind of corrective moves where you start to second guess and start to really think about if we are in fact doing the right thing. If you have a decent idea or a decent plan around your trades, I mean, this isn't going to be fun, but I guarantee you one thing is that when volatility reverts, and I don't know if it's going to happen next week, I don't know if it's going to take 2 weeks or how long it's going to take, but at some point, you can see, this is August, so it kind of skews the chart a little bit. But if you take a look here, right, every time volatility goes up, it reverts back to the mean. It goes up and it comes back down. It goes up and come back down. So now we are up, relatively speaking, right? If we just go back to post August, right? This isn't the first time we're seeing the VIX somewhere in the low 20s, right? And then not too long after, right, we see the VIX come back down into the mid teens. Now, it's kind of silly to tell you that, hey, wait a week or 2 weeks. It could take 3 months for VIX to come back down into the teens. I don't know when, but I know that it will. Sooner or later, it will come down. My only job is to make sure that I do what I need to do to get me from today to the day when the VIX is going to be back into the low or in the mid teens. And when the VIX will revert, and it will, once it does, if you are holding a bunch of 1x, 112, or whatever your trade may be, when volatility comes out, whatever you may be feeling and what is a unrealized loss right now, you're going to make all of that back and it's going to happen pretty fast, right? And this is one of the reasons when I make adjustments, I don't want to roll my naked puts out, a year and a half into the future, kind of, kicking the can down the road, saying I'm just going to, punt it 9 months out and then I'll deal with it later. Because when volatility reverts, those puts 9 months out, they're not going to get that volatility crush effect, right? That's what we're looking for. I already made several adjustments, and you can see that in the alerts channel, and I post whatever adjustments I make so that you can gotta get a sense of what I'm doing. And obviously, I give you a chance to ask questions, and I am here to share with you, and hopefully you can pick something up from me and apply something similar or same in your own trading. Let me share Option Explorer, and we can talk about adjustments while actually seeing adjustments, right? And I think this is one of, again, I'm not here to sell you Option Explorer, a software package, and none of that, but I have been using Option Explorer for, I don't know, probably 12, 13 years, maybe a little bit more. The reason for that is because at any given time, I need to see where my risk is, right? If you don't understand where your risk is, it's okay. You will learn, right? But you can see what the T plus zero line looks like, right? That's my immediate risk. I want to see how much potential I have, what my risk graph at expiration looks like. And more importantly, before I do anything, whether it's adjusting current trades or looking back, this is the way I use the software as a back testing tool, right? So, for example, if I have a trade and then at some point in the life of that trade cycle, I made an adjustment and that trade just went from bad to worse or whatever, right? I can go back and replay the same trade, and then I can say, well, what if instead of A, I did B? And then, right, I can go back and forth changing the dates and to see, right, I input instead of, let's say, selling puts at 5,500. What if I sold them a little bit lower or a little bit higher or with more time, less time, whatever the case may be. And then I go forward, right? This is what I like to call time machine. I go forward in time just to see how that would play out. And then I go back to any trade that I've done in the past, any trade that I may be considering. And again, let's say if you like as an adjustment, instead of making adjustments when your short puts reach delta 30, you say, you know what, I'm not going to do it at delta 30. It's too soon. It's there's not enough fear, or for whatever the case may be. I'm going to wait until my puts are tested. When they go in the money, that's when I'm going to start to make adjustments. Is it right or wrong? Well, I don't know. You have to figure it out for yourself. And the only way to do it is if you have software that you can use, you can jump in and you can say, all right, right now, for example, right, ES is moving towards that naked put. My naked puts right now are sitting at about delta 16. Well, earlier today, they were 18 and some change, or, right? For me personally, right, if I sell this put in the in the high single digits, maybe delta 9, maybe 10 or 11, right? If that delta number is going to double, right? That doesn't mean that the trade is busted or it's in, big trouble, but it signals to me that it's time to make some sort of adjustments. I need to start to look at some kind of defensive moves, because if the delta continues to increase and the value of these naked puts is going to increase, right? At some point, I'm going to need to act. And by act, I mean I'm going to need to close what I have and open something else. I know from experience that if you wait too long, any adjustment is going to be too expensive, right? Too expensive in relative terms, right? If we're not measuring dollars to dollars, we're talking about, if for right now, if I could roll, let's say this short 5,500 put, if I'm going to roll it out and down, right, I can roll it down to, maybe a couple of 100 points and do it for maybe even money, maybe even for a small credit. Now, if I wait until this 5,500 put goes in the money, I won't be able to roll it out and down to 100 points. I may be able to roll it just out for more time and not much lower, maybe 50 points, maybe 100 points at best, where I could still collect a small credit. Because anything beyond that, I'm going to have to pay a debit, right? And if I'm paying a debit, I'm extending my duration, which means I'm transferring my risk for more time. I'm going to be exposed to the market for longer. And if I have to pay a debit to play this game, that's not a game I want to play. If I'm going to commit to being in the market for longer, right, I need to have a reason to do that. Meaning I need to collect something. I need to take in the premium. That's how insurance companies operate. You want me to take on risk for longer, you have to pay me. I don't want to pay you and assume risk for longer. To me, it doesn't make any sense. I think it's a losing game in the end. So I know that I would rather make adjustments sooner than later, because if I adjust sooner, it gives me more options. I can roll it down farther. I can maybe only roll it for another week or two instead of having to roll 6 months out to where I could collect the credit, right? So I know for me, it makes sense to roll sooner rather than later. If you are on the other side of that and saying, you know what, I'm going to wait until my short strikes are tested, blah, 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 great. If it works for you, that works for me as well. Do what is best for you, but this is what I do. So earlier today, let's just talk about this trade. This is a trade 3104. And earlier today, and this trade has been already adjusted once. If you will go on Discord and you search for 3104 in that channel where I post my trade alerts, you will see how this trade started, what adjustments I've done so far, and this is how I got to where I am today with this trade. So this trade has been open for 9 days. As you can see, in the last 9 days, the underlying asset, which is E-mini S&P 500 futures contract, has moved down about 2.5 standard deviations. So it is fair to say that what we are seeing right now, as far as this move goes, and this is based on what was priced in at the time when I took this trade, which was on February 19th, we have moved outside of the expected range. So this is kind of, it's between 2 and 3 standard deviations. So this is kind of an outlier move. We could also make the argument that when the market was hitting all-time highs, volatility was at 15, it was too low, so the market wasn't really pricing in too much. It doesn't matter, right? What matter is if and when this trade starts to run into trouble, instead of giving myself this false sense of security, saying, "Well, I still have 61 days. Well, it's still far out of the money. Well, a million reasons not to do something." I think it's bad because the day when you feel like now I need to act, you only have so many options. You can hear me sometimes say that you need to hedge when you can, not when you have to, because when you have to hedge, sometimes you can't, right? So what I decided to do, and I have already punted this short puts once, and there it is. So I took the trade. This first green dot is when I took the trade. Literally, this is what about 7 days later, right? The market is selling off, and I rolled the naked puts. I'm gonna go on Discord just so that I know exactly what I am talking about here. So this is 3104, and my first adjustment was on 226. What I did was I rolled those puts in the same expiration cycle, right? So, oh no, sorry, I rolled them from April 25th to April 30th expiration. So I extended my duration by 5 days, and there was a debit. I rolled them from 5,600 to 5,500. There was a $7 debit that I paid. And to cover the debit, I had to liquidate one of my remaining hedges, and that covered the roll. So net in this trade, even though in this risk graph, it doesn't reflect the profit that I had collected from the hedge that I had to liquidate to cover the cost. But I know that for my purposes, I spend $700 to make the first adjustment, and I had sold a leftover put, which was part of a put debit spread in another trade, and that was a hedge. I liquidated that remaining hedge for $14.25. So I had collected about $712. So net, the adjustment cost me nothing, right? So here we are today with the market pulling back a little bit earlier today. These 5,500 puts reached about delta 18. Now I can wait and say, well, it's not 20, it's not 21, it's not 25. It doesn't matter, right? The market is under pressure. Volatility is relatively high. And I think that making adjustments right now is not a terrible idea, because on Monday, if we're down 2 standard deviations, I'm going to wish I have made an adjustment today. However, on the flip side of that coin, if the market is up 2 standard deviations, I'm obviously going to be a little bit behind if I make the adjustment today. My adjustment was, instead of rolling, right, I don't want to roll down, even though I can, but I don't want to roll it down because I know that if I roll these 5,500 puts down, right, they're currently going for about $47. If I roll them down, let's say 100 points, and I go down to 5,400, the 5,400 puts are currently going for $37, right? So there's a $10 difference, $500 a contract. So I'm going to have a debit. In order to cover this debit, I need to figure out where to raise this money to pay for it. Odds are I would have to liquidate some of the other hedges, and maybe that is the way to do it. Or what I chose to do, I chose to kind of bring in what I like to call these as like speed bumps, right? So I'm just going to slow things down a little bit. And what I mean by that, I went ahead and I look at my position delta, right? And because this is a ES contract, which has a multiplier of 50 and things aren't as simple as equity options, it gets a little weird how you look at the delta and you think that by buying a 17 delta put, it's going to actually cut this delta in half, but it isn't. In order to cut this delta close to zero, you have to choose strikes with a higher delta reading, uh, double of whatever you're seeing on your software. So what I did today is I went ahead and I bought a $5,700 put, and I paid $85 and whatever for it, right? So I put out like $4,200 for it. Now I don't think I'm going to hold this put until expiration, but basically by buying this put, you can see how this changes my number one net delta of this position, right? My net delta goes from plus, whatever it was, 17 or 13 to close to zero, right? I paid $85 to bring in a put that basically neutralized my position. As you can see, so this blue line here, this is my T plus zero of the position before any adjustments. And this very thin green line, hopefully you can see it. This thin green line represents my adjusted T plus zero. T plus zero is my risk today. This is how I should expect the price of this trade or P&L of this trade to change, right? Given a 1 or 10 or 100-point move in this trade. Let's take a closer look at this. So before making any adjustments, right, I had a delta, let's call this 13, but you can see it, right? Let's just say, right, for argument's sake, on Monday, if I do nothing here right now, and on Monday we're down 100 points. So we go from 59.60 or 59.50, right? Down 100 points will put us right at 58.50. Assuming no volatility change, but it will. Assuming no volatility change, this position could go from being down $2,200, which is this number right here. At 58.50, this position is down $4,000. Given that volatility is going to increase if we're down 100 points on Monday, right? Things are going to get worse, and this position could probably be down as much as 5,000 or maybe more, 5,500 or something like that, right? So by bringing in a put at 5,700, right? This is what my adjusted risk graph would look like. And you can see right now, right? This position is down $2,200 at 58.50, right? I almost don't lose anything due to just pure delta alone. At 58.50, I'm down 23, maybe 2,400, so a couple of $100 maybe. And there probably will be some losses due to an increase in implied volatility, which I can't really control. I mean, I'm not going to, Vega hedge this position because I assume that at some point between now and expiration, which is 61 days away, volatility is going to revert, right? Either things are going to get really, really bad or things are going to get back to somewhat normal and volatility is going to come back down. Remember that chart of the VIX I was showing you where it goes up and then it comes back down. So I'm not so much worried about implied volatility, right, for Monday, unless, right, if the market is going to do something like what we saw back in August, then you definitely want to have some kind of volatility hedges, but those aren't tied to any one individual trade. You kind of want to understand your overall portfolio of risk that you're holding and how much volatility hedges you want to have that will cover your entire portfolio. But by bringing in this $5,700 put, I cut my delta, right? Which means that if we go down 100 points, there aren't going to be massive losses. Like I'm not going to go from, being down $2,200 to being down 6 grand, right? But at the same time, or on the flip side, if we're up 100 points, right? This long $5,700 put is going to cost me. What is it going to cost me? Whatever I would have gained if I didn't make an adjustment, right? If I didn't adjust this trade and the market went up to, maybe 60.50, right? This trade would have only been down, maybe $1,300. And if volatility would come in a little bit, maybe I was only down 800 on an up 100 points day. But because I have this 5,700 long put, you can see that at 60.50, again, my losses don't really get erased either, right? So I neutralize this position for the time being. For right now, I want volatility to stop. Not volatility, but when I say volatility, P&L volatility, right? I want my P&L volatility to kind of freeze. I don't care if we're up on Monday. I don't care if we're down on Monday in this position, because right now I have almost zero delta in this position, right? So I want to wait until Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, right? I bought myself a couple of days for the market to kind of shake things out and to see which way we go next. Now, doing this, I know that by bringing in this $5,700 put, this doesn't solve all of my problems. And even if, right, for whatever reason, I do nothing else to this trade until, right, 61 days from now, where my short, and I have two of them, the 5,500 puts are going to expire. Maybe they expire worthless. If they expire worthless and we are above 5,700, that 5,700 put is going to expire worthless. And this is going to leave me with a put debit spread that will have about 170 days, which means the cost of this put debit spread is going to be about $3,100. So I have 170 days to potentially recover any of the debit that I have remaining in this put debit spread. That's not my plan, really, right? To kind of hope to break even in the end. I'm saying if for whatever reason, if I do nothing else and my front month short naked puts expire, I still have time to do whatever I have to do to potentially recover any of the debits. And worst case scenario, in 170 days from then, or about 230 days or whatever we have left now, I will break even on this trade. It's not the best case, or not the best outcome. That's not what I want. I don't want to break even. But you know what? I'll take a break even over getting blown out of the market. And I think you would agree too. Right? So this is a defensive type move. I neutralize this position to give myself some breathing room. If things continue to get worse, if the market continues to move against me, yes, my naked puts still need to be addressed. But that long 5,700 put, it's going to increase in value, and whatever cost associated with rolling my naked puts that I have to pay, I will have the long $5,700 put to help me pay for it. And then on top of that, I also have several tranches of other leftover put debit spreads, and I'll go and show you these next, so that you get a more of a sense about what this hedged income trade is about. Right. So the way I kind of treat this is, remember, again, to give you a little bit more context around this, we used to trade the 1-1-2 trade, right, which is a great trade by itself. There was a flaw, right, that we clearly overlooked, and we quickly realized after August that having a 50-point wide put debit spread in the same expiration cycle with your naked puts, that put debit spread doesn't do anything, right? Other than maybe slow the rate of losses. That is if the market is moving slowly. But if the market is going to swoosh, or and if volatility is going to spike, that put debit spread 50 wide isn't going to do anything to help you. You can't use it as a hedge to cover any expenses if you are rolling. Um, if you wait long enough, your naked puts are going to increase so much that the 50 wide put debit spread isn't really going to offset any of the losses there either. So what? And I've traded the 112s with very good results. And what I realized over time was that when I take off the naked puts, that leaves the put debit spread, right? But I only had like maybe 3 weeks at best with that put leftover put debit spread. And I had multiple. I had like, I think, six or sometimes 7 or 8 tranches of these put debit spreads with the naked puts, which would make the 112 trade. So I would end up maybe with two put debit spreads that had 3 or 4 weeks until expiration that were open against, you know, 6 or 5 other 112 trades. So these put debit spreads did absolutely nothing to help me when I needed the most. So how do we go about, changing things around to, build up some put debit spread inventory in the event that we do need to make an adjustment, and we can look to these put debit spreads to help us pay for any adjustments. I changed from 50 wide to 250 wide. I tried some 300 wides, 400 wides, and I go from time to time, right? So if I've been putting on a lot of 400 point wides, and I think that a 250 wide but closer at the money makes more sense based on what I already have going on. It's very hard for me to tell you that, hey, today we have to do 400 wide, and if you did this trade the next week you need to go not 400 wide but 300 wide. It's wrong. You always need to understand your needs and what your inventory looks like, and what else can you add to improve your overall trading business. So if I have a bunch of 400 wides, maybe 500 wides, or 350 point wide put debit spreads, and the market is running up, running up, running up, maybe I go with narrower put debit spreads, but they're also going to be a little bit closer to at the money. What that means that if the market starts to revert and pull back, right, move against me, the 400 wides that I already have, they're very far out of the money. So they may not kick in right away. That's why I have 250 point wides that are closer at the money. So they'll cover the gap, if that makes sense, right? So there's a lot of moving parts here, and it might be slightly more advanced, but the more you think about it, the more you talk about it, the more you ask about these kind of trades, and we can have discussions, until the end of time, but you will really start to understand how everything comes together, right? And if you have a one income trade that is potentially covered by several layers of leftover put debit spreads, it not only puts you in a stronger position, but you actually have more options when it comes to making adjustments or moving things around to kind of improve your position. So in this position, I already rolled my puts down and out once, right? I could possibly roll them again today and burn one of the hedges to cover the cost, which is not wrong, right? But at the same time, I think that bringing in a $5,700 put, yes, I'm going to probably lose money on this put. Not all of it, some of it. And then my next goal is at some point, I need to recover. So I know if I paid $85 for it and say by middle of next week, right, looks like the market found some kind of balance and now volatility is coming out and okay, market's moving the other way. I feel like I no longer need this hedge. And let's say this put is now trading at 60, right? So I'm down 25 points on one single contract. I'm down about $1,200. Okay, no problem. What I'm going to do next is if and when I'm going to either roll the naked puts that I'm trying to protect now, right? They're at 5,500. When this premium is going to collapse, I could potentially do another round of naked puts. I'm going to do them maybe a little bit more aggressive, or maybe on the next tranche of the naked puts, right? I'm going to go for a little bit higher credit to compensate and to recover what I may be losing with the hedge that I put in today. But by no means, right, would I ever let a thought such as, well, if I buy this hedge now and then the market is up on Monday or Tuesday, I'm going to lose $1,000 or $2,000. Man, I don't want to lose $2,000, so I'm not going to hedge. No, no, I'm going to hedge. And then if I end up losing $1,000, $2,000 on this hedge, I'm going to need to figure out how and where to recover this, whatever I may lose on this hedge. But one thing I know is that by bringing in this hedge and taking the risk of potentially losing a couple of $1,000s in this hedge, if the market is going to roll over and, you know, poop on itself on Monday, this trade is not going to put me in a position where I have to force liquidate because I have, margin issues or whatever. Right. So hopefully, I mean, there's always two sides. Like if you give me any scenario, right, there's no right and wrong, right? All right, if you do this, here's the good news, here's the bad news. Or if you do that, here's the bad news, here's the good news. And you have to decide, right, what works best for you, for your situation, for whatever you may be holding, and so on and so forth.